Is there a new battle line between Prince Harry and Prince William? Which important figure has come out to claim that Harry has killed the spirit of his charity? And what made Queen Camilla roll her eyes this week? We've got another fascinating show for you. Hello and welcome to a special episode of Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin and we have just the one guest this week, but he's a very special guest, a proper VIP. Richard Kay has been covering the royal family for the Daily Mail for something like 40 years and has always had such fascinating insights when he's on. So welcome to you.
Thank you.
40 years.
Nearly.
And you don't look a day over 29.
80.
Yeah. Now, subscribers to our channel will know that this is your second dose of Mr. K this week. A couple of days ago, we put out a video where he answered all your questions about Princess Diana. It's an absolutely fascinating watch, and if you missed it, it's going to play straight after this video, so no need to go anywhere. For those of you who don't subscribe, what are you waiting for? Press that button. It's free. So let's get into this week's news. Richard, we saw the Princess of Wales in the Lake District looking very well this week, wasn't she?
She did. She looked extremely well, and I think it's really encouraging to see that she's out and about and doing something that she plainly loves. She's a joint patron of the Scout Association, and she was up there with a lot of young scouters and the Chief Scout, and I thought she looked terrific. Of course, there was a lot of focus on what she was wearing, and in particular, the cap.
Yes.
I see generate a lot of headlines. There was a baker's boy cap.
I was really surprised about that because I know I've seen her in a baker boy cap quite a few times before. But everyone really got exercised about it.
They really did, and lines were drawn.
But then it does kind of like lend credence to this irritation that she has, that things become, what she wears becomes the focus.
And every element of what she was wearing was discussed, from the boots, the trousers, the new jacket, the roll neck jumper, and of course the aforementioned cap. But I mean, I think there was a more important message that she was trying to get across about the joy, if you like, of the outdoors life, of nature, and how important it is to her. And we've heard her talking about this before when she made that very moving film about her cancer treatment. It was shot outside, and she talked a lot about the natural world and how it's helped her.
Yes, and getting our kids outside and away from their phones.
That's very important too, yeah.
So, well, Prince William was also out and about this weekend at the football in a very grand box that had not one Duke, but two.
I know. I mean, once upon a time, these two young men, Prince William and the aforementioned other Duke, who was the Duke of Westminster, were Britain's most eligible bachelors. Of course, they're now both off the market.
Yeah.
Last year, the Duke of Westminster got married, and he and his wife were in this box with William and George, hoping to celebrate a win for Aston Villa against the great French team PSG. Unfortunately, they came up short.
Yeah, am I wrong? Do Aston Villa come up short quite a lot? I feel like I don't know much about football, but I'm always on this show hearing that Prince William must have been very disappointed.
He must. I mean, they're not exactly sort of the princely team. When you think of teams which would have royal endorsements, you think of the Chelseas, the Manchester Uniteds, the Arsenals. But William has made a conscious decision many years ago to support Aston Villa because, as he memorably put it once, he wanted to experience the whole roller coaster of supporting a team which doesn't always win, which is certainly the case in Villa's.
Certainly getting that. Come on, Aston Villa, do Prince William a solid. Well, we've got more on him later. And it's a story that is said to have really annoyed him, so stick around for that. Before then, though, the King and Queen are back from their trip to Italy. Today they're undertaking an ancient Easter tradition in the north of England. What is that?
Well, today's Maundy Thursday, an important date in the Christian calendar, the day before Good Friday. And it was a day that was very significant for the late Queen Elizabeth. And King Charles has followed this tradition. The tradition is that the monarch of the day gives out specially minted coins to recognise pensioners for their Christian charity and Christian service. And what's different is that, well, one, it happens in a different cathedral every year, and this year it's happening in Durham in the northeast, but also because the number of coins given out matches the age of the monarch. So today there are 76 coins for men and 76 coins for women, and it sort of reflects that ancient Christian tradition which derives from Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. So it's the monarch going cap in hand, if you like, to citizens and thanking them rather than receiving alms the other way around.
Nice. Well, there were a couple of funny pieces in the weekend's papers, weren't there, about Camilla's response to being asked if she thought the king might lighten his workload.
Yeah.
What was
Dream
that?
on.
Yeah.
And I think she uttered it 3 times when she was asked about whether the king was adjusting his workload because of his ongoing cancer treatment. Dream on, she said in that very basso profondo voice.
Do you think
of
she's
hers.
dreaming on? Do you think she's
think
dreaming
she is.
about it?
But I think there was an important message in this. She was saying that his work is part of the cure, it's part of the treatment.
Yeah.
You know, because he can involve himself in so many different projects, crack on and do all these engagements as they did in Italy, it's helping him, and I'm sure it is. I mean, he seems much invigorated by that trip.
I agree with you, and it seems that there are reasons to be positive about his health and his recovery.
I think there are. I mean, he is of an age where treatment must be tricky, but he's sort of gone into it conscious of the fact that he wants to be able to continue doing his kingly duties as well.
Yeah.
So everything has had to sort of work alongside his official duty. And I think it was really clear quite how important that is on that trip to Italy, where they did a phenomenal number of engagements. You've got to remember all the time, this is a couple who are in their mid-70s.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're never going to get really personal, really detailed information on the king's health, but sometimes you kind of have to join the dots, and all the signs look good, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
You do have to join the dots. I mean, we still don't know what kind of cancer he's been suffering from, and we don't know the full extent of the treatment that he's had to undergo. But just occasionally you get these coded messages, like the Queen saying, well, actually, it's helping him. And you can see what's going on here.
Yeah. Now, on a slightly less positive note, you have written about the feeling that the trip to Italy was slightly overshadowed.
Well, it certainly was at the beginning. When I wrote that piece, it was the day that Harry had arrived to appear in court for yet another one of his court cases. This is his endless battle with the British government over his police security. He feels he's been badly let down by the authorities here, that it's not safe for him to bring his family to Great Britain because of his lack of guaranteed armed police protection. Well, you know, the fact that Harry turned up, was in court and was unexpected, and it coincided with the first day of the King's tour to Italy, and it did steal a bit of the King's thunder on that very first day. Harry was front page news, not the King.
Well, we will have more on Harry in just a moment, but before then, let's turn to a couple of your comments, and we'll start with one from Richard's Q&A about Princess Diana. This was from Minkster, who writes, really liked this episode. You should be so proud to have gotten to know her and been a good friend. Thank you for that. When you talked about William and his mother, I cried. I firmly believe they had a very close bond. I read that she confided in William and he saw her pain on occasion. That had to be hard on him. I think that made him the person he is. So, wow, that's a really moving comment, Richard. How did you find the questions in that episode? I thought
the questions were terrific because they weren't the general sort of banal sort of what was she like type of question. They went quite deep, and particularly what I thought our viewers are interested in is how things have panned out with William and Harry, and how might Diana have resolved those issues had she still been around. I mean, I thought they were intelligent questions, and I'd be very happy to do it again one day.
Oh, well, there you heard it here first. We've got it on tape. Now, a reminder that first episode of Richard Kay's Q&A about Princess Diana will play straight after this show. To last week's programme now, where EJS was one of a number of you celebrating Charles and Camilla's 20th wedding anniversary, writing congratulations to the King and Queen on their 20th anniversary, but more impressively, on their thriving 55-year love story. Clearly they are meant to be together. And on the subject of Prince Harry's legal bid to get taxpayer-funded protection when he's in the UK, more on that in a minute, by the way, Aquarius says, it's ludicrous how Harry wants the same protection as the Prince of Wales. He walked away from his duty. I do get tired of his nonsense. Capitals on the word nonsense for emphasis there. Now, while the Shazben says, the media and commentators need to stop saying that Harry's security was stripped. He still gets security, but it is not on an automatic 24/7 on-demand security because he doesn't live in the UK or function as a working royal. All he has to do is give 28 days notice and details about his plans so that a risk analysis can be done and appropriate measures put in place. Thank you very much, and do keep those comments coming in. We do love to read them out, but I stress we only read the polite ones. All right. Sticking with Prince Harry, and he's the subject of some bruising words by a chief who is the brother of Prince Seeiso of Lesotho, who founded Centre Bali with Harry. He says that since Harry married and left the UK, he had a quote-unquote loss of interest in the charity, which totally killed its spirit. That is some strong words, Richard, from an important figure. What do you make of that?
Very strong words. Yes, he is an important figure, the brother of Prince Seeiso, as you say, someone who knows Harry, perhaps not as well as his brother, but
these pesky brothers.
I know. But what does it tell us? I mean, I think he's actually uttering a truth that since his marriage to Meghan, Harry, he may not have neglected the charity, but he certainly hasn't been as prominent in his visits to Southern Africa as he was beforehand. Okay, he's a father, he's got children and other issues on his plate now, and it's a very long way from California.
But he has made other trips.
And in fact, I think one of the points that the tribal chief makes is that on one of his visits to South Africa, I think with Meghan, he didn't come to Lesotho to see how the charity was getting on. So I think he has issued a rather difficult statement which Harry may have to address at some stage.
Well, on to Harry's legal battles now. Now, his court case against the UK government over whether or not he's entitled to police protection when he's here rumbles on. There was no solution, but he did speak to a newspaper about it. What did he say, Richard?
Well, after the case concluded its sort of public hearing, he sought out a newspaper and gave quite a frank interview about the things that he had heard in closed session. Without going into specifics, he basically said they were hair-raising and explains an awful lot, and it just wasn't right, and this sort of thing. And one wonders what it was that he was hearing, because we simply don't know. They're deemed to be of a secret nature and could affect security in some way. That's why the media was barred from that point.
Right,
I've got to say one thing on Harry's behalf here. I've always felt that Harry should have wraparound security when he's in the United Kingdom. He is undoubtedly a terrorist target in the same way as the King and the Prince of Wales is. And this idea that he should give 28 days written notice of his arrival seems a bit fanciful, because I'm pretty certain many VIPs come to this country, foreign heads of state, who do not give 28 days notice. I think if he were to give 10 days notice, that surely should be long enough for a comprehensive security plan to be put in operation. He is an important figure still, and it would be awful if something were to happen while he was here with Meghan and the children.
Yeah.
And it would be a reassurance, obviously, for him if he got that wraparound security back. I think people have been concerned that he wants to have 24-hour-a-day security paid for by British taxpayers, including when he's in California. Well, clearly that's not practical and not feasible, and we wouldn't pay for that. But I think he should get protection when he's here.
And do you think there was a coded threat at the end of that interview?
Well, as ever with Harry, you have to read between the lines, and some people have taken it as saying this is yet another gun to the heads of the royals, that what he was saying here, or rather what he wasn't saying, because he knows what was said in court and he's going to possibly reveal all, could that mean another book, another volume of Spare Part 2? I mean, there's no indication that he will write another book, but the implication...
Could he really be bothered? Books are hard.
Books are hard.
Yeah.
He had a very good ghostwriter last
True.
time.
Yeah.
So maybe there is an implicit threat that he will speak out more about this subject.
I guess that there's always going to be that sort of like low-level anxiety where Harry's concerned, because he has shown that he will.
The issue with Harry and the royal family is the T word, it's trust. Can they trust him not to say things which he's told in confidence, relate private conversations between his brother, his father, his stepmother, and everyone else in the royal family? And the answer is simply no.
Yeah.
And they don't trust him.
Well, he might have been critical of the royal family per se in this interview, but publicly criticising His Majesty's government is surely rather awkward for the King.
Well, it's hugely awkward for the King. And you know, here is Harry suing his father's government in his father's court. which is why it's made it so awkward for the king to have a position on it. What could he do? I mean, Harry was clearly invoking, asking his father to intervene and sort of sort this out, as though Charles has that kind of authority to do so. I'm not sure that he really does. I mean, you know, we live in a democracy, and it's a government that makes decisions, not the monarch.
Now, it's interesting. I want to draw on what you were saying about Harry being a legitimate target with or without security. And, you know, Harry's been in court saying that he fears for his safety in the UK. So you can understand why people raise eyebrows at him jetting off to an actual war zone, like he did. And, you know, in fairness to me, injured servicemen and women, but in the heart of the Ukraine.
It was ludicrous. I mean, part of his shtick is that it is not safe for him to be in the United Kingdom. And yet, no sooner had he spent his 48 hours in court than he was jetting off to a bona fide war zone, to Ukraine. I mean, good for him, because he was sort of following up on things that he's wanted to do. He's supporting injured warriors in that part of the world. But it's slightly mad, isn't it, to suggest that he's somehow not safe in Britain, but he would be safe in a war zone where bombs are dropping all the time and it's indiscriminate killings of civilians are going on.
I mean, it's kind of, for a lot of people who are critics of Harry, it's beyond irony, isn't it?
It is. I mean, but I don't think Harry's been very good at irony.
No. Well, the whole trip is reported to have annoyed Prince William.
Well, yeah, we haven't got a clear readout on that, but the issue here is one that William is sort of following Foreign Office and government advice, going to places where it's deemed safe for him. So the week before Harry was in Ukraine, William was in Estonia, seeing British forces on manoeuvres over there. And we know that William would very much like to pay a private visit to the Ukraine himself. And he has not been able to do so because it's not deemed safe enough for him.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of jumping in at the last minute without telling anyone trip, which Harry did, because at Buckingham Palace we're told we're not aware of this in advance, will have irritated him.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that it's a reminder that William hasn't been able to go into combat in the same way that Harry has.
Well, that's a perfectly good point. I mean, William, as heir in line to the throne, was not allowed to see frontline service in Iraq or Afghanistan when he was serving with the military, in much the same way as many years ago Prince Andrew was allowed to see active service in the Falklands, but Prince Charles, when he was serving with the military, could not see any active service.
I can't say it's something I'd be particularly jealous of, being allowed to go to war.
I get that, but I understand about service. Are you there as just someone to look good in a uniform, or do you actually want to do something with all the training? Because William will have had the same training, basic training, as Harry, but he couldn't put it to any good use.
Now, we've noted on the show before that Harry will often do engagements or tours when the other royals are less busy, around July and August. But do you think, is it very cynical of me to think he spotted that his brother likes an Easter holiday?
Well,
and therefore
he will rebuke me if I say that he did think that, but I can't believe that it didn't cross the minds of his handlers, who would very much be aware that royal duties are pretty much set in stone. You know roughly when they're going to be working and when they're not. And there was a sort of a blank passage in the diary, and he stepped in and filled it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're very accustomed to talking about Harry as the litigious royal, but there have been suggestions that William is considering taking legal action over the publication of pictures of his family on a skiing holiday in Europe. And we've agreed not to mention the name of the resort. But the royal skiing holiday, with its photo call, used to be sort of an annual tradition, didn't it? And that would make a big change.
It does, and it would. I mean, I, as a beneficiary of all those early royal ski trips, with the King and his sons, with the Duke and Duchess of York and their daughters, I mean, they were very much a part of the winter routine. They would go to their various ski resorts, and there would be a posed photo call. They'd answer a few inane questions.
Well, and my favourite one ever was the one where Prince Charles was slagging off Nicholas Witchell with a hot mic. That
was wonderful. That was on the eve of the prince's, as he then was, wedding to Camilla.
Yeah.
And he was very tetchy. That awful man, he said. Poor Nicholas Witchell.
I can't stand him.
But William has changed all that. I think he's in slightly dangerous waters here, because he's trying to lay down a law which applies to the media in this country right around the world. He wants his privacy in Europe, where they take an altogether more relaxed view about these things. I mean, other royal households send their heirs and spares off for skiing holidays and accept that pari match, as in this case, might take photographs and they might appear in the coverage. William, it seems, there are murmurs that he wants to take legal action. Now, he has done it in the past against French publications, but I think on the last occasion, famously, some snatched topless pictures of Kate were taken, and that was quite right. He has got to patrol that privacy. But on this case, I'm not so sure.
But that's the thing, it's like, how can he expect in this modern world to maintain that amount of privacy on a global stage? It seems impossible.
I think it's impossible because we're a much more interconnected world, and the smartphone has changed everybody into a citizen photographer. If it isn't pari match, someone will be taking pictures. They'll be posted on social media. Is he going to go after, these people as well?
And meanwhile, People magazine, which is seen as another favoured Sussex news outlet, has published a story suggesting that Harry is upset with the status quo, and it confirms that there have been no private meetings between the King and Harry, his younger son, for more than a year. And it says that Harry's calls and letters go unanswered, and that the King has been unavailable to see Harry the last 3 times he's been in the same country as him. Is that true?
Well, I think it's certainly true that father and son haven't met for 14 months. The last time was that amazing flying visit that Harry did. I think he's got 25 minutes with Charles while the helicopter rotor was absolutely already going round, and he was anxious to get on board to go. And Harry turned up, but nevertheless, they did have a meeting. But since then, no, nothing at all. I thought one of the interesting things about the People article was that Harry still writes letters. Now, that probably tells us more about Charles. Of course, Charles famously does not have his own mobile telephone.
How interesting. Yeah.
And maybe he knows that the only way to get through to his father is by handwritten correspondence. But on this, it seems that's not working now either.
Oh, wouldn't that be quite sweet in any other scenario?
I can imagine these Dear Papa letters will be very heartfelt, saying, please can we talk? Charles is conflicted because of this court case, and I think he wants that out of the way, because he does worry that whatever he says, and he's bound to say something to reassure his son, but it might be used in the court case, and he can't afford to let that happen.
Well, there was one piece of nice news, because we learned that there is one bit of royal harmony that has stayed intact. Harry hasn't fallen out with Princess Eugenie, as has been previously reported.
Indeed. That mischievous Piers Morgan had suggested that because he was photographed with her arms around him, or his arms around her, Eugenie I'm talking about, that will have upset Harry, and that Harry was going to cut her off at the legs.
Because she had her arms around William? Is that what you mean?
No, around Piers.
Oh, around Piers.
Piers Morgan. And I think...
Because it's always all about Piers.
Funny that, isn't it? I mean, there was an assumption on Piers's part that this would enrage Harry, because Piers is one of Harry's enemies. Yes. Apparently. But no, not true, according to People. Harry remains tight with his first cousin Eugenie, who is the only member of the royal family, I think, who's been to spend time with him in California since he's been there.
Oh, we love a cousin. Well, the royal family, with its close ties to the military, have long been key figures in remembrance and memorials. Royal historian Dr Tessa Dunlop has written a new book on the subject, which she told us all about.
If you think of the medieval period, you've got the likes of Richard III, famously dying in battle. Likewise, King James at the Battle of Flodden. We're killing each other, Scots and English. And kings are dying in ditches or slain over their horses. And this goes right back, if you think, to William the Conqueror and Harold taking an arrow in the eye, apocryphally anyway, certainly dying in that battle. And then you move into the modern period, you still see princes dying on the front line, or dying serving for Queen or King and country. For example, Queen Victoria's grandson actually died of malaria in the Boer War, and you see then her as the head of state lean in to commemoration like never before. And that's really the significant gear change. It takes place in the late 19th, early 20th century, where, yes, the extended royal family are still fighting and serving, and the head of state is serving as this broader canvas, not just for their individual family members, but for the whole nation, a way of serving as a template for a population in shock and grief. Certainly by the time of the First World War, we've lost up to 1 million men. Imagine the pain, and crucially, the royal family sharing in that pain. Perhaps one of the most affecting examples, I think, of someone who walked the walk and talked the talk was the late Queen Mother. We associate her very much with looking the East End in the eye when Buckingham Palace is bombed early on in the Blitz. But actually, her relationship with war and the pain and loss associated with war goes far deeper than that. Because she loses her big brother Fergus at the Battle of Loos in the First World War. This is where we get the idea of the royal bride laying her wreath on the tomb of the unknown warrior. That was initiated by Elizabeth, about to become the Duchess of York, when she gets married to the Duke of York, later, of course, to become George VI. She feels the pain. In fact, her wedding in 1923 was one of the first times her mother came out publicly. She'd felt such grief at the impact of the First World War on her sons. So I think it's really important, and I found the journey of going through commemoration over a 2 millennia period, just how crucial the royal family are, how embedded they are in our military narrative, and how that role, the one they've played, has changed. I was lucky enough to get in to meet the Duke of Kent, and he's one of the great unsung heroes in many respects of the royal family. He sort of slips under the radar. You catch him pottering along in Kensington, unmanned, forget money on security. He's out there doing his thing. And it was a great privilege to have a moment with him, an audience with him in Wren House. He is a veritable gentleman and someone who has really committed himself to duty without frills or baubles. He was in the Royal Scots Greys and then rising, by the way, to Lieutenant Colonel. But when he retires, he then basically becomes this human stitch in our nation's need to commemorate. And the reason he's so effective is because he loses his own father when he's but a slip of a boy. I think he's 6 years old. It's 1942. The then Duke of Kent is being sent on a really important mission to Iceland, and his Sunderland flying boat, mysteriously, still unresolved to this day, crashes off the coast of Scotland. There's been sort of never-ending speculation about why the plane crashed. And I think the Duke of Kent, the late Duke of Kent, his father, was a glamorous figure. He had his demons, there were flaws, but he found himself in World War II in this role of service. And there was something pitiful about, as Churchill brilliantly said, this gallant prince dying, the last royal family member to die in active service. So that's quite something. And what that did for the Duke, in some ways similarly that it did for the Queen Mother as a young woman, it meant he could walk in the shoes of others. Think of all those children in the Second World War who discovered they were never going to see their dads again. Well over 250,000 young men are killed. And the Duke of Kent was one of those young children. The way in which we so easily lend into anniversaries and commemoration is partly because of our royal family. We have this focus point. We know where to cheer. We know how to remember. Military service generally, I think, does the royal family favours, and the royal family does military service. It's a kind of mutually beneficial relationship, particularly when it works. But there is a degree of pain around it. If you're fully engaged with your role as a military player, you're a team player by definition. And the Duke of Kent was, and Prince Harry very much was. And both of them were devastated when, respectively, they were removed from their operations precisely because of their royal status. So that's what happened to the Duke of Kent when he was serving in Northern Ireland with the Royal Scots Greys. And of course, we all know famously, that's what happened to Prince Harry. And I think that's a massive loss. And it was interesting, actually. I spoke to the private secretary of the Duke of Kent, and he likened much of Harry's young life with the Duke of Kent's life, because there are two lads in this very privileged gilded cage, both seismic loss when they lose a respective parent, and then go into the military, really find themselves serving in the military, and that carpet is pulled from beneath them. Because guess what? The reason why you're so valuable to the military is the same reason that you can't actually fight on the ground along with your fellow servicemen and women. And that's gutting. That's gutting if you want to be part of a team. And a really good military player is a team player. And the royal family know that. And actually, to give Harry his due, I've spoken, because I took the book from Boudica right up to present-day Afghanistan, and I spoke to two extraordinary women who'd both lost a husband and a son, respectively, in the Afghanistan conflict, which is a difficult conflict to remember. It's not like the Second World War. The Taliban are back in Afghanistan, and you're wandering around having lost your key player in your family? How do you reconcile that? And both of them spoke to the power of Prince Harry on the commemorative circuit. How valuable he was, how charismatic he was, how effective he was, especially with young children. Helen Lewis, who lost her wonderful son Aaron Lewis, she talks of this way in which Harry always looked out for her grandson. Even the press picked up on this little special relationship they had, that he brought a degree of joy and personality to a memorial calendar that, if you're part of it, which you are if you've lost a key family player, can become quite formulaic. And it's the royal family's role to inject lifeblood into something that might otherwise become a bit hollowed out. And I think, for me, writing this book, and I'm someone who, I'm unapologetic about saying that I think there are aspects of our royal family that need reformed. But this is one of their roles they do brilliantly. They do absolutely brilliantly. And I should also name check the then Countess of Wessex, now Duchess of Edinburgh. When you go around, for example, the National Memorial Arboretum, and Princess Royal, Princess Anne, and the Duke of Kent, you just look at the number of really important memorials to all sorts of unsung servicemen and women. And on a rainy day in February, who's turned out to cut that ribbon to make those men and women feel seen? Generally, it's one of the royal family.
A good couple of unsung heroes in there. A reminder that Tessa's very moving book is called Lest We Forget and is out next week. We'll put a link to that in the description below. Last week's programme went out before the conclusion of the King and Queen's successful state visit to Italy, and as such, we weren't able to bring you all of the fantastic images from the trip. Well, we're going to rectify that right now, so here's another of our unmissable montages. Bellissima. A reminder to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest royal news, views and those never-ending controversies. Richard Kay answers all your questions about Princess Diana in the video that is up next. Click here for that. Just time to say thank you to him, thank you Richard, and to Tessa Dunlop, and to you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.